now that we've looked at marginal productivity and we've looked at this concept of productivity, we're going to look at the second item that we need to look at. And the second item that we have to look at is costs. Okay, we talked about productivity, and now we have to start putting some costs associated with making that level of productivity. So our costs are really you could think of them as per unit, okay? As we produce more product, for example, we go from making one widget to two widgets. Well, all the materials and supplies to make the widget have to double to go from one to two. You know, if we're making pancakes, if you're making pancakes, the amount of pancake dough, pancake mix, whatever, it has to double. You know, you make one pancake, there's 10 ounces of pancake mix, and you make two, you're using 20 ounces of pancake mix, and so on. This is what's known as variable cost. We know that from accounting, so you're familiar with variable cost. And we could think of our total variable cost as the sum of all our variables added up. We also have to look at marginal cost, which is really how much extra cost are we incurring to go from one unit of production to two, to three, to four, to so on. And then we got our average variable cost, which is really taking our total variable cost and divided by our output. So as a small business, you're looking at these costs to, again, consider, when are my costs lowest? When do I get my best cost structure, okay? So this really gets added to the analysis. So if we looked at our analysis, here's the same basic chart again. Here's the total units of labor that's being employed, the total product that's being produced, the marginal product, which is really the difference between how much the product grew from one level to the next. 0 to 4 is 4, 4 to 16 is 12, 16 to 36 is 20, and so on. The average product, which we saw was total product is 4 units divided by 1 employee is 4. 16 units divided by 2 employees is 8. 36 divided by 3 is 12. So we can see how those are calculated. So what we're doing is we're taking this bit of information here, and we're adding these 5, 6, and 7 columns, which is calculating the cost structure associated with these items. So our first issue in terms of costs are really costs that vary with units of production, okay? So these three, total variable, marginal, and average, all vary with units of production. So in this particular instance, we're looking at our variable cost, and I'm going to ask you now, how much extra does it cost to make one extra unit of labor, to add one extra unit of labor? How much extra is being employed here per unit of labor?
120.
Yeah. If we don't hire any workers, our variable cost is 0. When we hire one worker, we have to pay $120. So we're basically paying, let's say, $120 a day, or $120 a week, or $120 an hour. It doesn't really matter what the time frame is, but we're adding $120. When we bring on a second worker, we're adding another $120. Hence, it's $240 in total. When we're bringing on a third worker, it's another $120, which is $360 in total. Another $120, $480. And we can see effectively every single worker that we add adds $120 to our total variable cost. Now, we don't look at the costs in isolation. So we need to look at our costs, and these two over here say, okay, let's look at our relative costs, okay, our relative costs. The marginal cost, which is a little bit confusing compared to all the other things we looked at, what we're doing with our marginal cost here is we're asking, how much did our marginal cost go up per unit? So let's just hop back here. It's the increase in total variable cost as a result of producing one more unit of output. So we went from 0 to 120. And there are 4 extra units. So really, our cost went up $120 to make 4 extra units. 120 divided by 4 is 30. We went from making 4 to 16, and our total variable cost went up by 120. So 120 divided by the 12 additional units, 10. We went from making 2 to 3. Again, another $120 was added. And we went up by 20 units. So what we got is 360 and 20 units. Okay, so we went up $120, 20 units, $6 per. Went up by another 120. Our costs went up by 24, 5. And we can see how that's calculated. Again, that's the one that's the most confusing. Okay? If we look at our average variable cost really is taking a look at our variable cost, our total variable cost, divided by units of output. Now, total product is a fancy word for output, okay? That's another thing that you need to consider. So a total cost, in this case, total variable cost was 120. 4 units of output, 120 divided by 4, gives us and we total variable cost 240 divided by 16. 360 divided by 36. 480 divided by 60. So this is where our average variable cost. So really what we're saying is what is the variable cost on average per unit of output. And again, these are the important considerations here in doing that. Now you say, okay, well, so what? We've done this analysis. What difference does it make? What is it really telling us? Well, we can assess it from our graphic here, our table, or we could plot it. You could take those numbers and plot them. And here they are right here. Okay, same sort of thing plotted. Let's just look at the table first. Okay, so our marginal cost, our total variable cost has this pattern of going up, 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 up. It continues to go up, which makes sense because as we produce more product, our total variable cost is always going to increase as we add more and more product. Let's look at our marginal cost. Our marginal cost starts to decline as we make more. In other words, the additional cost per unit tends to decline, bottoms out, and starts to go up again. So what we're doing here is getting efficiencies in terms of our cost. In terms of as we keep adding extra units, we're cutting our cost per unit down. And in fact, it's lowest here at 4 units of labor. In other words, this is really efficient here in terms of, a good indicator that we're getting efficiencies. But again, average variable cost is the real telltale in terms of, let's say, where are we doing with getting our costs lowest? Well, this is our cost per unit. Really, average variable cost is looking at the cost per unit of output. And we see that it starts to decline down here, bottoms out, comes back up again. Again, similar type of pattern we've seen, but in reverse. These tend to go up and back down. These go down, and then they go back up again. And as I say, we can actually plot these as well right here. So you can take that information and plot it. Now, like anytime we get a marginal product or a marginal cost, the marginal cost and marginal product line will cut. You can see it cut here and cut here. And there's something unique or interesting or informative about where it cuts. It always cuts at the lowest point in the case of costs or the highest point in the case of product. Okay, so we got this minimum average variable cost will occur at where marginal cost intersects it. Okay, so this 75 level will give us the minimum average variable cost, and this 60 level will give us our minimum marginal cost. Okay, so variable cost of production is really a reflection of productivity. Where is the highest productivity? And again, costs are the key thing. So whenever our average variable costs are lowest, that's where we'd like to operate. Okay, so that 75 is good. So we can calculate these here. So what I'd like you to do is to take a few minutes and work through this one right here. Third item that we need to look at in here, we looked at productivity and we looked at our cost of operations, or our variable costs. The third item that I mentioned is the fixed cost. Now, fixed costs are wonderful because fixed costs don't tend to change. So fixed costs are, for the short term, fixed. They don't really move, so they're set. And you can think of lots of items that are considered as fixed costs. For example, the cost of depreciation will be fixed for a building, or cost of rent would probably be the same. You know, these sorts of things. The mortgage costs would not change based on the volume produced. And we got to remember too that our total cost is just a combination of our total fixed cost plus our total variable cost. So two of those items together would give us our total cost. And our average total cost is really the total cost of our operation, which include fixed and variable, divided by the output. And our marginal is the change in total cost over the change in total output. So we keep adding on to this same table. You'll notice that we have 8 columns in it now, as opposed to the 6 or the 3 that we started with. So if we look at this particular table right here, table 6.4, we see we got our output again stretching through. We got our output again stretching through, the number of workers. Okay, and then we look at our cost structure, and I just wanted to go over here to our total fixed cost. Notice that our total fixed cost is constant throughout, hence the definition fixed cost. So we don't have any change here. It's just standard right through every range of output or every range of worker. The average fixed cost takes your total fixed cost and divides it. So let's say, for example, we had a fixed cost of 30. We had an output of 1, 30 divided by 1, 30. If we take the second case where we have 2 units of output, our total fixed cost is 30, 30 divided by 2, 15, 30 divided by 3, 10, and so on. So you can see that our fixed cost follows this same type of pattern. It starts off high. As we can get more output, we can spread that fixed cost over a greater number of products. So you see, for example, that fixed cost will drop as we increase our output. Now, you don't have to be an economist to figure it out, right? You just know the more you make, you're spreading your fixed costs over a greater number of items. Our total cost is a combination of our fixed cost, our total fixed cost, plus our total variable cost. So 20, in this case, plus 30 is 50. 28 plus 30 is 58. So total cost is just the sum of total variable and total fixed. And our average here is taking our total costs and dividing it by the output. So we take our 50, we produce 1 unit of output, 50. Take our total cost in making 2 units is 58, divided by 2 units, 29, and so on. Now, again, the average cost structure that we look at is the one that is the best tell of business. You'll notice total cost will follow a pattern of drop, 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 bottom out, come back up again. So we want to operate our business with the lowest possible cost. Our objective in any business is to keep our costs low. Now, the best way to keep costs low is just to not operate at all. You won't have any costs then. But considering you're an operation, you really need to keep your average total cost lowest. So right here, our average total cost is lowest at an output of 5. You can see this lowest point there. Okay, so it will help inform you of where you should operate your business in terms of most productive. Now, in the short run, you can't change anything else. In the long run, let's say, for example, your lowest cost comes in here, and that's 5 units of output, but you really have enough demand out there for 10 units of output. You can sell 10. If you could make 10, you could sell 10. Well, in theory, you could make 10 here, or you could make 8, let's say. In theory, you could make more, but you notice your costs start going up. That's because all the other factors of production are the same. Your factory is as big as it is, so people are going to start bumping into one another. You only have so many managers. Your employment of resources, such as the materials that you get in, you only have so much. So if you got to get more, you got to pay more. So in the long run, those things can be changed, but in the short run, they can't. So as a result, in the short run, you may not be working at the most efficient. So when a firm speaks about cutting costs, what they're trying to do is reduce their average cost rather than total costs. This is a situation right now in the airline industry, for example. And the 737 MAX, which was in the news so much over the last little while because of a couple of bad crashes, and they're grounded. And then we had this COVID situation hit on top of that. But the 737 800, or the MAX, will soon go into operation. I think the FAA is clearing it. But anyway, the point of it is that this is a piece of equipment that costs $130 million to buy. Okay, each one of those machines is about $130 million to buy. Why would companies buy them if they already got airplanes? Why would they buy a brand new one if they already got some? Well, it all has to do with costs. The airline industry is particularly heavily laden with regards to fixed cost. There's huge fixed costs in the airline to buy the planes and all these sorts of things. So really, in order to economize in an airplane, in an airline, the, the way to do it is to get your variable costs as low as possible. So airlines are always interested in driving variable costs down as opposed to their total costs, because again, fixed costs are pretty high. So really, we only got the variable costs that we can really attack. The 737-800 or 737 MAX 800 is sold on the basis of lower operating costs, as is every new airplane, okay? Every new airplane is being sold based on lower operating costs for airlines. And they suggest here that the MAX is supposed to give 8% lower operating costs. And for airlines, fuel is the biggest chunk of their variable costs. An 8% reduction is huge, huge, and it'll have a significant impact on the airline's bottom line. So this is why 5,000 plus of these 737 Maxes have been ordered. Now, whether there's that many delivered after the fuss that they've had, but Aerospatiale, the same thing. They make something called Airbus 320, which is very similar to the 737, and they've got all kinds of orders for their new model, the Neo model, which is a lower cost item. So this idea of cost cutting, particularly in the short run, and using this type of math that we've been doing here, is designed to find that sweet spot that the business can operate in the short term. And it's also designed to identify where costs can be reduced in a business to get their numbers working for them.